Welcome to today's Institute for Supply Management presentation titled Maintaining a Talented Supply Management Workforce, sponsored by Zycus. It's now my pleasure to introduce your content moderator for today's presentation, John Yuva, editor of ISM's member publication, Inside Supply Management. John, welcome to the presentation.
Thank you, Kurt. I'd like to welcome Andrew Bartels, Beth Green, Ron Pence, and Steve Wade. As Vice President, Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, Inc., Andy advises tech industry vendor strategy professionals by predicting and quantifying growth and disruption in the technology industry. His expertise is in the shifting economics of the industry, including spending, budgeting, and the influence of macroeconomic trends. Andy is also a thought leader in the sourcing and procurement technology markets. Beth is Senior Corporate Manager, Supply Chain Operations, Risk, and Opportunity Management for Northrop Grumman Corporation, where she is responsible for developing and implementing supplier risk and opportunity management processes, performance profiles of top strategic suppliers, subcontractors, and support of overall supply chain strategic planning across the enterprise. Ron serves as Director of Supply Chain Policy and Compliance for Northrop Grumman Corporation, Information Systems Sector. He has primary responsibility for establishing and implementing supply chain policy and ensuring compliance with the requirements of Northrop Grumman Corporation, federal acquisition regulations, public law, and the Aerospace Quality Systems Standards, AS 9100, in support of procurement and subcontract activity in excess of $4 billion annually. Steve is the Director of Benchmarking Programs and Marketing Initiatives for CAPS Research, a global supply management research organization jointly sponsored by the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University and ISM. Prior to joining ISM in 1998 and CAPS Research in 2000, Steve managed the state of Connecticut's Procurement Technical Assistance Program and was employed by the University of New Haven and the Science Park Development Corporation in New Haven, Connecticut. Our agenda today will focus on key issues and trends surrounding talent management, new strategies and techniques to tackle talent management issues, and talent management as a viable business strategy in a shifting global landscape. Andy, Beth, Ron, and Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to start off that we recently completed a research program earlier this year that really addressed where organizations are with respect for their needs for highly talented individuals. And at the end of the day, when the report was completed, we found that companies are still struggling to create opportunities for highly talented individuals. And they do recognize that tomorrow's supply management employee will require a different set of skills to operate in a different economic environment. So it's changed. The world continues to change. The whole profession is continuing to change to be more of a strategic and less than a tactical operating environment. So following the results of the survey and other reports that came out, some of the questions that we were getting back is there a real shortage of supply management talent, both at my company and across the world, and how is my leadership addressing this shortfall? What is the likelihood that my company will outsource or offshore some of these activities, and are there sufficient numbers of new or existing jobs available for supply professionals? Another question, what functions in supply management organization offer the best opportunity for employment? And I'm going to address that when going downstream. And in today's marketplace, what am I worth to the company? Now, what we don't have is any kind of salary comparison or any salary charts. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the worth. What we're going to talk about is worth to the organization and what it really means to be part of the supply management group of the company you're with overall. So this is an interesting slide that looks at how companies feel or responded to the question about shortage of supply management at their company. And overall, the question was, is there a shortage? The answer is, well, it could be. But of course, each company is different. But overall, we found that 80% of the companies who participated in the survey did report they experienced talent shortages in one of the more following areas. Now the bar at the top means that organization or that function, if you will, resides within supply management. And the bar at the bottom, which is the yellow bar, indicates that there was a talent management shortage, that was experienced during the course of the year. So it's interesting for me to note, or interesting for us to note, that if you look at the more strategic tasks such as procurement, purchasing, supply relationship management, quality assurance, contracts administration, that you're going to find that more organizations did report a talent shortage in those areas overall. Now, some of the reasons why these survey participants haven't been able to fill all of the open positions, and by far the largest group, was lack of qualified applicants, hiring freezes, compensation, and other issues. Of course, we bucketed. There's a number of different reasons why companies reported they were not able to fill the positions, and in fact, some of them were just, there's not dollars at the end of the day to justify increasing the staff at the present time. When we ran the second phase of the survey, it was still kind of unsure of the direction that the economy was going. So under the other category, most of that other was really about, we don't have enough money, or we don't have the budget, or we want to make sure that there's going to be a specific need in dollars to fill that specific need going forward.
Now, the report cites talent management among 8 critical challenges that supply management organizations will face in the coming decade. Before we discuss what needs to be done to counter this, let me begin with a basic question. Andy, I'll pose this to you. What are the key expectations CPOs have of procurement supply management professionals in terms of performance?
Well, I think there are two sort of different sets of questions that they arise. One set of questions being the more traditional expectations. The second is a more emerging set of expectations. Around the traditional ones, it, of course, comes back to what the goals for supply management typically are. That's to say, what can you do to reduce our cost of the goods and services we buy? But what we're also finding, and along with that, of course, what can you do to improve the quality of our suppliers? But I think the second longer-term question we're finding is, given that we want to push more and more of our actual buying down to lines of business, what can our supply management professionals do to help that process? How can they facilitate change in that line of business activities so that they, in fact, become better in the sourcing or in the purchasing or contract management and take more of that load as part of their responsibilities?
Thanks. Steve, can you tell me, with respect to the survey, one of the things that we're seeing is not necessarily certainly there's a difficulty in obtaining qualified applicants, but one of the things that we've found through some of our internal reviews here is that I'm not sure we're doing a really good job of defining our requirements and educating the talent acquisition community on some of the basic competencies and skills that we're looking for. So I'm wondering to what extent that may play into some of those numbers.
Well, each company, of course, is going to be a little bit different overall. The idea that the skills, the competencies are going to continue to evolve, and again, we're looking at a more strategic view. Certification requirements continue to change. The whole idea of what we're looking for in an employee is not so much regional anymore based on where we're at with respect to this operations, but how do we address this on a global perspective. Now, Northrop Grumman, you guys just completed this whole, I believe just completed this whole implementation alignment structure. Could you address that for a little bit for us?
Absolutely. I mean, we've noticed internally here, and it's I'm sure very familiar to the rest of the participants on the call today, that there has been a significant change and some dramatic shifts in the skill sets that we're looking for, both because of economic conditions, consolidation, globalization, some of the technology changes, increasing regulation. That's been driving a lot of that change, and we've moved significantly away from the traditional parts manufacturing in the true material acquisition into more sophisticated integrated systems and platforms, requiring a different skill set and looking to, at the same time, bring those skills internally up to where we need those. Part of that is the first step in that process is understanding where the supply chain organization is today relative to the industry and the market, and then being able to baseline and forecast the future supply chain talent needs, which are going to be critical to us being able to sustain a competitive workforce going forward.
Well, great. Well, now we have our first polling question. The question is there currently a shortage of supply management talent at your company? And the options are yes, no, and not sure. So let's take a moment and see what people say. Well, it looks like the yeses are coming in well ahead of the no's at the moment.
Well, I see 56, this is Steve, I see that about 56, 57% in climbing are still experiencing a shortage, and that 80% that we referenced in the report published earlier this year was almost the same number that we captured in a report or in a survey released in 2009, that at that time organizations were shedding talent more than looking for talent, but there was such an overreaction, it appeared there was such an overreaction in the market at that time that when they were trying to hire back that specific talent, that they were finding that there just weren't the right talent, the right base of talent available at that point in time or at that place at that point in time. So, John, is that the results of the question? It looked like we had about 57% overall, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so yes, there's still a talent shortage out there. So, what I'd like to do is we recognize the fact. CAPS Research has recognized the fact, and I think other companies do that there is a shortfall. We're still not where we need to be or we want to be, but we still have to get the job done at the end of the day. So, how are we addressing the shortfall in qualified supply management employees? Now, I apologize for the size of this slide. I think some of that text might be hard to read unless you've got the full screen setup on this. But again, if we're looking at a 2-year over a 2-report cycle. The red bar at the top is based on the survey results completed earlier this year, and the yellow bar was the report completed in 2009. So in this slide, we basically rate the importance of alternative choices to completing work that was left behind. So number one, and by the way, this is on a scale of 1 to 5. So how important is this? So 0 means it's not important at all, and 5 means it's extremely important or critical. So how did companies do? Well, outsourcing the work rated just a little bit over 3.0 on the importance scale. But assigning work to current personnel just about tapped out at the end of the chart. And I'm sure everybody today understands you're probably doing more with less resources and carrying a workload that you may not have necessarily had to carry in the past. And that's one way that organizations continue to address the shortage. In many cases, organizations have hired temp employees. Again, it rates at about 3.0 scale, and hired personnel without the proper credentials, required skills, or proper training overall. And another one is companies have transferred personnel from one organization or one function to another and provided just basically on-the-job training, get the work done. And then on that is automating work. So I find this number kind of interesting that automation, the ability to automate or the importance of automating work that was left unskilled, rated a little bit less important than some of the other tasks that we looked at. And at the end of the day, then the work was not completed. So that goes back to a statement I made earlier that before hiring decisions were made, organizations wanted to make sure that there were going to be sufficient revenue at the end of the day to cover the additional staffing to get the job done. So in some cases, the work was not done. In some cases, it was just parsed out further. Those that get engaged or engaged in contracting work understand that There may have been a slowdown in product, or suppliers may not have been qualified or vetted in advance. So it's kind of a mixed bag overall. But important to this to me is the fact that management and senior management understands that there are various alternative courses of action to take other than just saying, okay, let's hire somebody and move on. So in addition to the area we researched on talent management, the report we did in 2012, and in addition to some reports we've done through our program called CPO Insights, two of our preeminent researchers, Dr. Phil Carter and Dr. Bob Monska, had decided to really take a look into what are called the megatrends that are impacting the business world today. And the megatrends are basically the demographic shift, global short sourcing from North America or other more established economies to offshore to China, to pushing more into India, into Vietnam, into areas that have not traditionally or historically been a core base of manufacturing. Production locations, changing technologies, and of course, the megatrends on economic, political developments. All of these are key megatrends that are impacting and reshaping the business world. So CAP's research determined that these companies probably should adapt their value chain strategies for long-term success, and these value chain categories basically look at talent management. So, and we're going to go into these in a little more detail, but talent management means just that. How do we ensure that organizations have the right amount of talent with the right skills and the right capabilities at the right place? So value-focused supply and category strategy, and I want to go back to a little bit what Andrew had said earlier, is you got to make sure that there's going to be value proposition for the company and that the employee himself or herself is going to add value to the process. Risk management is key. Risk management covers everything from what we saw in the tsunami area to supplier viability, to being able to provide products. I know the aerospace industry is continuously concerned about counterfeit parts. So risk management, supplier sustainability, supplier capabilities are all key issues. Environmental sustainability, is it cost effective to be green or not be green? Supplier innovation. Many of us used to work in an environment where we would deal with supplier A, B, C, and D, and gather from these suppliers the information to produce or assemble or do our own product. Now we're seeing that it's basically supplier A is working with supplier B, is working with supplier D to get to the point where we have an entire supply chain that is inclusive of suppliers and as part of the overall supply chain rather than working with individual suppliers in silos. Extended global supplier networks, it's just that. Across the globe, companies are working. We're manufacturing in Vietnam, or they're manufacturing in China, and they're manufacturing in Michigan. We got to measure. We got to understand what we're producing, what we're buying, how effective and efficient we are, and then we have to make sure and check our supply chain analytics to make sure that we are, as Andrew pointed out, getting the bigger bang for the bigger buck overall.
Well, great. According to the 2012 CAP study, a lack of qualified applicants is by far the number one reason that CPOs have been unable to fill open positions, cited by nearly 80%, while fewer than 20% believe the problem is a function of inadequate compensation. Andy, we're looking at this fact. Would you agree that the time has come for CPOs to work harder at making the procurement and supply management function, their companies, and their specific job openings more attractive to job seekers?
I think absolutely. I think the key challenge here is to shift the perception of supply chain management or procurement from being I'll call it clerical or tactical role of simply executing purchase orders to a more strategic role of finding and selecting and managing key partners outside. And remember, in many cases, suppliers are in fact key partners. With so much outsourcing going on, so much building of tight supply chains, you really are looking at partners that are critical to business. So in a sense, it becomes the key task here is for management, not just at the CPO level, but actually at the CEO level, to understand and to talk about and to emphasize to employees the importance of the purchasing function in corporate success. Now, that applies, of course, internally, because one of the best opportunities for finding applicants is, in fact, internally, finding people who may be interested in this from a line of business perspective. But, of course, also applies in terms of how you position this job to outside candidates to emphasize the strategic nature of supply management and its role in corporate success. I think that's a critical stress that needs to be made by executives to help attract employees who are interested in challenges, interested in making a difference to this very important function within an organization.
Absolutely. And there's also plenty of research to suggest that different generations of workers have vastly different work motivators and ideas around such things as the role of technology, work-life balance, job security, loyalty, and engagement. Beth, I'll pose this question to you. With a no-size-fits-all approach to talent management going forward, what would be the key imperatives for CPOs?
Yeah, in addition to those noted by Steve, one of the big things for getting it out to the different generations is to try multiple strategies to identify which works best for your workforce and then follow it up by mixing it up, because one thing that may work for a while may not work continuously. And that's one great way to get ownership within the job and really maintain the motivation within the workforce, and of course giving them additional assignments or things that they're interested in and actually polling employees periodically to increase that engagement.
Well, good comments all, and as this slide shows that today supply management organizations do consider and are likely to consider talent management as a viable business strategy. As they adapt to shifting global business dynamics and sourcing locations, those decisions have to include the right talent at the right place. They'll integrate highly efficient tools and technologies into the workplace. The tools and technologies allow the supply management employee to be better about his and her job and to be obviously more productive and more cost-effective at the end of the day. And then understand, as I mentioned earlier, that the evolving economic and political climates will continuously impact on operational processes. So if supplies are cut off from an area, an unstable area, part of the globe, it'll be up to the supply chain and up to the procurement organization to make sure that those flow of products, that flow of material, it remains uninterrupted. So there's alternate sources of supplies and alternate suppliers to carry that load going forward. So I'd also mentioned that CAPS Research has a program called CPO Insights, and through CPO Insights, we send out a question set to our CPO community that addresses a number of topics. And recently, the topic of talent management has been popular. And at our best practices workshops and other events, I don't think we have any major gathering of our CPO community without some dialogue and comment about where we are with respect to talent management, and how do we find and retain that cadre, that core staff, whether they be strategic or whether they be operational employees. But throughout these short CPO Insight question sets, we found that most of the CPOs, about 80%, did report that they have and still have open positions for which a shortage of qualified applicants. And they're saying it's just difficult to find the right person to fill the job this year as it was last year. So they just don't know what the next year is going to bring, because as they're looking for this base of talent, I think it's just a matter of working with retaining and retraining those to build that effective workforce. So going forward, who knows? That 2012 has been a difficult year, and 2013 might be just as difficult for a lot of the organizations. And then we ask about, where are the shortages at? Where did you find it most difficult to find qualified applicants? And the numbers there from North America down to China kind of tell the story. And the CPOs that responded to Eastern Europe, everybody that responded to a survey that has operations in Eastern Europe, what we would call the former Soviet bloc or communist countries, we're finding it difficult to find really anybody local that had the knowledge base or the understanding of the supply management dynamic. So that's obviously an area of growth because Eastern Europe is becoming one of the core low-cost countries for sourcing opportunities. Below that, just about every place, Southeast Asia, China, U.S., and Western Europe, are around 80%. So everybody is concerned and has been concerned with respect to the numbers of people, where they're at and where they're going. So just to rephrase and restate what we'd looked at before, is we're looking at different professional development methodologies. Retention approaches are being changed to account for the Gen X, Gen Y, the generational geographic differences. So the person that is transferring to Shanghai might have a different type of needs and requirements than if they were moving to Seattle rather than Shanghai. The professional, the whole certification process and the more specialization, getting into commodity category management, risk management, being more of a strategic cog to the whole supply management process is going to be very important to the company going forward. And these very successful supply management organizations have been and will be effective in recruiting, training, and retaining talent from different economies. So as we've all known in the Far East and China, as soon as somebody was the general comment we had been hearing, as soon as somebody was trained, ready, and a very functional employee, that person was pirated to go work for another company overall. So that type of growth is difficult to manage. It's good from the growth standpoint, but it's difficult from maintaining the career standpoint overall. So I know that again that Northrop Grumman has had a lot of experience in managing and evaluating current global supply chain workforce across their enterprise.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, it's we've recognized, as you stated, that the strategy, and Beth had indicated earlier that the strategy has to be one that's comprehensive. There's not really one size fits all solution, but you have to begin with a good understanding of your specific requirements and an honest assessment of where you are today as an organization in order to be able to close those gaps. So one of the things that our executive leadership chartered us with earlier this year was to go out and conduct and evaluate the current workforce across our enterprise to establish a baseline so that we can make some data-driven decisions and recommendations on how to move forward and what our strategies would be. And there's really three parts to that. There was the review of our current look across the enterprise with respect to the current demographic profile of our workforce. So things like education and age and location. And so there was a lot of really good information that came out of that with respect to the need for some really structured succession planning and recruiting strategies. Developing the Global Enterprise Competency Model was a way for us to look at, again, before we can define the kinds of talent that we need in order for us to implement a recruiting strategy or to understand where those gaps might be within the organization, we had to have a model in which to assess or make those assessments against. And based on, we had to base that on the requirements that are not only here today that we're aware of, but with some knowledge and forecasting of what some of the additional competencies may be further down the road. And then after that, to look at the competency model and to assess the workforce, the current workforce that we have against the competency model to determine where there may be some gaps that require some additional developmental action or some additional training opportunity. So the questions that we started out trying to ask the organization, and they recognize it at all levels of the company, that supply chain has become an increasingly important function within the organization, contributing to a significant portion of the revenue and the sales. So they do look for us now in all aspects of managing those relationships with our external suppliers and being involved in that innovative process from the outset. So the questions that we posed to leadership, or we asked, were, do we have supply chain leadership succession plans? Have we identified who those, or how we're going to backfill and prevent knowledge loss throughout the organization as people retire due to the baby boom and for other reasons? Resources. Do we have the resources that we need positioned in the roles to maximize their skills and talents? So we could have very talented people that are slotted in perhaps the wrong position, or maybe there's another aspect that they're very good at, such as risk management or program management, that would be more beneficial and yield better results for their skill set. And being able to assess the workforce fairly regularly to determine whether or not we're closing any gaps that have been identified, and how are we tracking that, and how are we measuring that. And then developing a recruiting strategy that leverages not only the internal relationships, but some of our external relationships with industry affiliates and through various other vehicles with universities, university relations, and even some of the trades. So one of the ways we wanted to try to tackle this is of course, get a voice of the customer. We wanted to make sure we understand that we were addressing the correct problem or challenge. And so we went out to our internal stakeholders, leadership in the various functions across the organization, not only supply chain, but program management, mission assurance, the leadership in supply chain and subcontracts. And we looked at and we asked them the simple question: what did they believe, based on their experience and their interaction with the function, what was the biggest challenge facing supply chain today? And as you can see from the results here, the largest response, 80% of the respondents, indicated an area that was really workforce related. So it wasn't the technical skills or some of the external factors, customer-driven requirements and things that were really driving a lot of the inefficiencies or perhaps lack of competitive assistance, if you will, to the organization. But it was the people skills that we weren't really staffed up and focusing on the people development side as much as we should. We took that feedback and then we broke that into stakeholder specific areas with relationship to soft and hard skills. We looked at some of the themes that when we received feedback on the competency model, what were some of the areas, the soft skills we were looking for and some of the hard skills that we were looking for. And as you can see on this chart, it's a very, there's no surprises with respect to the hard skills, I think. Some of these skills are areas that we've been focusing on for significant portion of time, and we continue to build in those areas as well, and a good portion of our training goes to those areas. But the softer skills come out too as well. There's the ability to be more strategic in your thinking, the analytical acumen, and the advisory role now that supply chain has to play in some of the sourcing and business decisions related to execution, and the relationship management piece. So there's a lot of soft skills that really have to complement the hard skills in order for the workforce to truly be successful, at least in our business here. From that, we developed a competency model, and that competency model builds on several industry models that have been out there and studies done over the years, as well as our own internal modeling through our learning and development organizations here with our human resources and talent acquisition team. So we looked at 6 primary leadership competencies, 5 functional supply chain competencies, and then we started to build out role-based competencies in some of the core areas within supply chain. This is the first of several phases that we'll go through, building out various lower-level competency models in the various roles within supply chain. But this is a good first step and represents by far the largest portion of our supply chain. And the goal here, again, like I said, there is no one-size-fits-all type of solution. So we built it out at a fairly high level to allow some flexibility on how they execute. And the execution is really based on the specific business unit and the specific business model for that unit, and what skills they're really focusing on from a developmental standpoint. But we use it to drive and aid in recruiting strategies and succession plans, to assess current workforce capability, and to make sure we identify those knowledge gaps so we can go back and address those from a learning and development aspect. And then making sure that we're properly aligned between the functional job roles and the skill sets. The worst thing you can do is put somebody in a role who's highly skilled but isn't given the opportunity to display those skills in an area that would truly add value to the organization. With that, I'll turn that back over to Steve.
And thank you, Ron. That's pretty good insight and certainly appreciated that you guys have spent a fair amount of time and attention on making sure that process is alive and well and will continue to serve Northrop Grumman well into the future. I want to change gears just a little bit because this is one of my favorite slides, and based on some data that we at CAPS Research had recently collected from our cross-industry survey. For those not familiar with that, we go out and we ask companies, a number of companies every year, sort of the same basic question set, so we can trend year over year how organizations are performing, and what is the key elements within their supply management group that we should be focusing on and measuring for change year over year. So this year we did things a little bit different, and for the first time brought into the mix where we actually deal with real numbers. So this slide gives an indication of the results of the cross-industry report, and that bar in yellow that says overall report and N equals 154 basically means that the data we're going to discuss, so in the overall report was provided by 154 different companies, and then I just randomly selected 4 industry sectors from that group: aerospace, financial services, industrial manufacturing, and utilities, just to get a feel for how each industry breakout would compare to the overall report. So when we ask about the total number of supply management employees, that's just what we ask for. How many people, how many are assigned to your supply management organization? So the 154 companies reported greater than 54,000 people. So 54,000 supply management employees out there. And then to reaffirm what we thought we knew, and I think is pretty much on track, is about 30 to 35% of that entire base of employees are strategic. And strategic are just that. These are employees that have more responsibility than the day-to-day procurement activities, but generally engage with suppliers, do your risk assessment, get involved in category strategies, are more aligned with the company being able to provide its product or service at the end of the day. So your operational, and certainly not denigrating what we would see or discussing the operational, but somebody has to do the heavy lifting, right? And this is generally the operational employees. I mean, these individuals do everything from the admin-related functions to the PO processing, to the cutting, to accounts payable. So everything that would not be considered as a strategic, of course, falls into the operational side. And by some industry sectors, that includes logistics and warehousing, and some industry sectors it doesn't. So when we look at the increase on just this past year, when we looked, and this is based on 2011 data, so the report, we started capturing the information in March and published a report in July, we see that strategic employment increased overall by 3.7%. And given that strategic employees are 35% of the population, that's not bad. Operational increased by about 4%. That's not bad either. But when we start looking at total numbers, we're dealing with a really large workforce that are operational. So we're seeing the rate of growth is probably higher and more significant on the strategic side than it would be on the operational side. Breaking that down just a little further, we look at the aerospace industry, and there was a population sample of about 15 companies, and not surprisingly, as we've been hearing from Northrop Grumman, a good number of those are operational employees, and now the focus is on the strategic employment. So that industry sector showed about 21%, strategic 79%. But look at the growth in strategic side. You know, that 8.1% increase in strategic employees over the course of the year is just basically blows away the 4% increase for operational employees. Now, if you're in the financial services sector, I've got some bad news for you. The 8 companies, and these are all major financial services companies, all in the Fortune 500 size range, have a small number of employees. 62% are strategic, and by their definition, 38% being operational. But at the end of the day, when we subtracted the pluses from the minuses and looked at the numbers, there was no change. So they were flat. Financial services, as this group of companies, did not increase nor decrease their supply base. Industrial manufacturing showed an increase, again, 40% are strategic, about 60 operational, and showing a good solid 4% growth in strategic employees is all positive. And utilities is the one that kind of blew me away when we started looking at the numbers. We have 17 major utilities participating in this study with over more than 4,700 employees. 30%, 29 to 30% are strategic, and that number realized a 10% increase in numbers. Conversely, the operational employees realized at the end of the day a 2.7% increase. So the message here is dealing in numbers. If you're looking at having or shifting, becoming more of a dynamic employee for your organization, the companies are looking for strategic thinkers. They're looking for those that fit that grid that Ron Pence discussed earlier, as far as this is what we're looking for: a critical thinker, a team player, negotiation skills. This is the type of employee that has been difficult for the companies to maintain and hold on to. So I think we've got a question going over to Andrew at this point in time. John, you want to take that over?
Yes, thanks, Steve. Building on what Steve just said, Andy, being that there's that procurement and supply management are greatly affected by a lack of qualified skilled professionals, how can CPOs tackle this skill set issue?
Well, I think one of the key things that they can do is obviously prioritize. And, of course, skill up. But certainly prioritization is important, and that means taking the skills that the employees that they do have and making sure that they're being devoted to the critical activities of risk management, contract management, and sourcing, as opposed to the day in, day out actual execution of purchase orders and requisitions. But related to that is also pulling some of them aside and actually using them to help do some of the training of, again, line of business people to do more of that operational activities, or to involve them in the actual sourcing or contract management, to start to move in effect towards being part of teams that include both the supply chain people and the line of business people around negotiating a contract, or around doing the sourcing, or around managing that contract, and in doing so, getting the line of business people picking up more of that work and taking on more of that, so that those scarce resources can actually be leveraged more effectively by the use of line of business people doing more of the day-to-day work that traditionally had been done by those skilled professionals.
Great. And while training and development is widely cited as a strategy for coping with the emerging talent crisis in procurement and supply management, the 2012 CAP study finds companies spending, on average, just $982 per year to train and develop each supply management employee. Steve, I pose this question to you. To retain procurement and supply management talent over the longer term, CPOs may need to lobby for more direct training and development funding, but can there be other creative and inexpensive ways to accomplish the same results?
Yeah, there are, and I think everybody understands that when budgets get tough, generally the first thing to be cut out of the supply management organization budget is training. I mean, that's been that way, it seems like, forever, and I don't think that is going to change anytime in the near future. So when economy is good, training dollars go up. When the economy is not good, then training dollars go down. But organizations that focus on the specific need and requirement. So let's take, for example, the diagnostic needs assessment tool. If you have a staff of 200 or 300 people and you're trying to say, okay, who do we need to train and where do we need to train them and how do we need to train them, first you have to understand or assess what their skill set is at that point in time. So not everybody is brought up to speed at the same time, because not all organizations have their jobs matrixed so that everybody understands everybody else's job. So there's a number of different tools to do this. You can do it online. You can do it through self-assessment. You can ISM ADR has the diagnostic needs assessment tool to utilize. You can do brown bag lunches. You can do topic subjects. Introduce the certification process. Require or encourage those employees to take the CPSM, to look at different certification processes and abilities to strengthen their learning curve and make them a more valuable employee. It's all a matter of what does the employee want to do. I don't think in this environment that any purchasing, procurement, or sourcing individual should be complacent and assume that they don't need to improve their job skills to help the company do a better job at whatever that company does. So there are cost-effective methods. It doesn't have to be spending money to go to different training programs or attend different university courses, but it can be very ad hoc, very brown bag, and very down in the grass one-on-one training sessions or small group training sessions. And that's, as I just flipped that slide, Ron, again, Northrop Grumman has, as part of this integration process, has put forth a company-wide advanced learning process and certification tool, and this next slide talks to that a little bit. If you could pick it up at this point, please. Sure,
absolutely, and appreciate that. Yeah, I would agree that one of the things that we strongly encourage certification. There is a level, and as part of that competency model I just covered, part of that is a level of personal accountability for one's own career and career development activities. And obtaining certifications in various areas are certainly part of that because it lends credibility to the individual as far as their ability to demonstrate their skill sets or the knowledge that they've acquired. And this chart here really reflects or is reflective of the various needs throughout the supply chain. So there's not a standard type of certification that we promote from within, but there are various different overlapping functions you'll see here that tie into supply chain. So materials, supply chain, of course, CPM, CPSM, the program management certification, which many of our supply chain personnel pursue, as well as various university certifications. So it's a very diverse list of skills and certification programs that our group really has attended and continues to pursue. Beth, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. As you can see by the diverse set, 25% are looking at certifications, and that number is growing depending on what program they're on, as well as what the requirements are for the product that they support. So in addition to having that external certification, going back to what Steve had mentioned, looking at education assistance programs within the organization, even if you don't have specific training dollars, you can often tie together with a separate education assistance, which is usually capped at a certain dollar value or along a certain range. And then you have the professional society, industry association presentations. You can do lunch and learn and brown bags to bring it back into a little bit more of a cost element. And then one of the best ways that we've seen and across industry is putting them on special projects. So working a proposal or working on specific initiatives, and going back to what Andy mentioned, training them across the strategic side as they get the operational elements as well. So just bringing everything together, and it all ties in.
All right, thank you, Beth. I'd now like to welcome Mike Cravens, Director of National Accounts Management at Zycus, who will introduce the next slide.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I guess I couldn't envision a better lead into what we're going to talk about here just briefly. As we grapple, in procurement with the challenges and I guess the associated opportunities currently, what I'd like to do is invite all attendees to our 2012 procurement conference. It's called Horizons, and it's actually being held October, as you can see, October 21st through 23rd in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're going to be holding it at the Ritz-Carlton. I guess what you would be able to, to look forward to out of this would be, access to top procurement executives, industry experts, as well as analysts. And in a bigger, in a bigger context, especially this conversation, we've set this up with separate tracks to address kind of the unique challenges, of the breadth of procurement executives, all the way across to analysts, and that's to give everyone involved as enriched opportunity as possible to get to know what's going on and to look at what's going on in the future and what's on our horizon. Additionally, as the name implies, interacting with peers, the leading analysts, as well as rekindling some old friendships, as happens with these things. We feel that all the attendees we're setting up a really nice environment for people to be able to handle these challenges going forward, and to get a better understanding of not just what's going on inside of your halls and your organizations, but also what some of the top, what some of the leading procurement organizations, analysts are looking at as well. So with this in mind, what we've done is we've partnered with the Ritz-Carlton, and we've put together a promotion for y'all. And basically, what that is we've negotiated a special rate for 2 nights, or for 2 nights and 3 days, of $450. And this gives you access. And what we'll do with that is we'll also, as part of that, we'll throw in the access to the entire conference, which is about a $900 value as well. And that would give you access to a lot of planned activities that are outside of the conference, as well as all food and beverage, and of course, access to the conference itself. As you can see, there's a special code that we've developed for this in concert with the RITS. And to register, simply go to the website that you see below, horizon2012.zycus.com, or should you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot us an email at horizon2012@zycus.com. We appreciate your attendance and your time, and I'd like to turn it back to you, John.
All right, thank you so much, Mike. Before we get into audience questions, I'd just like to pose a question to Andy. According to the 2012 CAP study, procurement executives say they're more likely to automate than outsource supply management work, ranking the former at 3.8 on a likelihood scale of 1 to 5, and the latter at just 2.2. Now, Andy, as companies look to automation over outsourcing, what kind of role will technology play in talent management?
Well, I think technology is actually going to be increasingly critical to supply management. It's critical in really two different ways. Three different ways. One, of course, is technology allows automation of the routine transactional type processes that ordinarily have been done by purchasing professionals. And by doing so, it reduces the need for some of those more pure transactional or operational skills. The second thing is that it enables, to the point I made earlier, more line of business people to play a more active role within the supply chain function. Remember, part of the goal of many of these tools is, in fact, to put them in the hands of line of business people. So over time, they can take on more of the role themselves using those tools of sourcing, of contracting, of purchasing, and reduce their need for this purchasing group, supply chain group, to do that for them. But the third piece is that many of these tools are, in fact, highly collaborative and allow multiple parties to work together, and in the course of that collaboration, provide a vehicle for training. So a tool that does, let's say, sourcing, and allows a team of people, line of business and professional people, supply chain professionals, to work together to do a sourcing event, becomes a vehicle as well for training those people in how to do effective sourcing, or a tool that enables them to do spend analysis and identify where the opportunities are. Initially, that may be part of something that's done with a supply chain professional involved in that, with the line of business people being more viewers than active engagers. But over time, they too can use these tools to do more themselves and again reduce the need for supply chain group to do that for them. So technology is absolutely critical. It helps automate processes. It helps engage and involve line of business, and also helps train those line of business people in these sourcing, contracting, procurement functions that traditionally have been the heart of what a supply chain management group does, but now does it in a fashion where they now are coaches and teachers and monitors, not just the executors as they've done in the past.
Right. Thank you so much, Andy. Let's address a question from the audience, which is, what are we currently doing to create an adequate talent pool in all facets of supply chain management? I'll pose that to you, Ron.
Yeah, there's there's several strategies. Like I said, there's no one-size-fits-all strategy or approach that we're employing. It's really understanding what the needs are in your specific area, understanding from the business community what those skills are that are needed, and then coming up with that approach, which involves both bringing up to the standard of expectation the staff that you currently have within the organization, as well as developing strategies for recruiting the skill sets that you don't currently possess internally and can't develop internally, and partnering with the universities and with industry and the associations in identifying the best means for filling those gaps.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ron. I apologize for not being able to get into more questions from the audience. However, we will be responding to your questions following the event. For more information about maintaining a talented supply management workforce, feel free to contact Zycus or Steve Wade at CAPS Research. Attendees of today's event will receive an email from ISM within 10 business days with links to your continuing education hours certificate and the archived interactive recording of today's event. For these secure links to work, you must be logged into ISM's website at www.ism.ws. Please use the username and password that you normally use on the ISM site. If you can't recall what that is, select the My Account link at the top right below the welcome message, then select Recover My Password. If you haven't yet set up a username and password, you can create a new one here. Or if you don't have or know your ISM ID number, you'll need to contact ISM Customer Service at 800-888-6276, option 8. The login link is accessible through ISM's homepage at www.ism.ws near the top of the screen in the shaded gray boxes. After you are logged in, the link sent in the ISM post-event email will work and you will be able to retrieve your documents. Save your ism.ws username and password for future events and to interact on ISM's website. I'll turn it back to you, Kurt.
Thank you much, and we'll ask our audience to stay connected for another few moments. That does conclude today's presentation, Maintaining a Talented Supply Management Workforce, brought to you by the Institute for Supply Management and sponsored by Zycus. Thank you to our presenters, Steve Wade and Andrew Bartels, and moderator John Yuva, and also to Beth Green, and also to Ron and Steve as well. We do hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. As a reminder, we ask you to take a moment to complete the evaluation that will be appearing momentarily. Again, please stay connected for that evaluation. Your comments and suggestions are important as it helps us provide you with future quality programming. Today's program is copyrighted in 2012 by the Institute for Supply Management, all rights reserved. You can disconnect after you have completed the evaluation. The evaluation will appear now. Have a good day.